You're listening to the Small and Supercharged podcast with Ria Freeman, episode 12. Hello and welcome to today's podcast. You're hanging out with me for the next few minutes and we are talking about content. Oh yes, that word that gets bandied around and attached to everything. I use it a lot. I use it in hashtags, content marketing, call to be creative, content creator. There are more. But I wanted to talk about what content was because it feels a bit like one of those marketing buzzwords that everyone uses and it feels kind of big and clever, but really it's really, really obvious. And I just wanted to talk today about content, about why it's important, why you should create it, and the different kinds, because I think people think of content has to be X or Y. It doesn't. Make it work to suit you. And this is what I actually gave a presentation at the Farm Business Innovation Show in November. And one of the points I've covered was content. And obviously when I was giving this presentation, it's a seminar even, there were lots of different people in there from lots of different businesses. And what I really thought was important was that in a perfect world, we'd create various different kinds of content. We'd create all the content, let's be honest. But we have time factors, we have family factors, we have work factors. We have a lot of stuff going on in our worlds. And that means that sometimes you can't do everything. But what you can do is you can find a kind of pillar and you can either use that content as your only piece of content you put out. I feel I should be getting sponsored how many times I say the word content. If anyone fancies a drinking game, just take a swig whenever I say it. Obviously, non-alcoholic, we do not condone that. Here on the Small and Supercharged podcast, have water, stay hydrated. So it can take many different forms. And I think some people go, well, I'm not very good at X, so I shouldn't do anything. No. If you're not great at X, do Y, do A, do B, whatever. So the most obvious form of content in my world is written word. So it's blogging. It's really good website copy. It is guest blogs. It is all this kind of written stuff. And I'm usually talking online here. Although, of course, you can write for magazines as well. I've got a couple of columns I write for people as well. So writing is a really good form of content. Another good thing about when you write online is that you can use your content. Honestly, sorry, I just can't think of another word, content, to help with your SEO ranking. So if you're looking to rate for specific keywords and you mention those in your content in the correct way, there's an awful lot to SEO, but Google reads words. So that is a positive thing. Obviously, there's a lot of strategy behind it, but from a written point of view, that can actually help you in more ways than just allowing your customers and your potential customers to read something of interest. It can also help Google to recognize you as somebody who is a source of importance or interest in that area and helps match you and with someone else's inquiry that might also lead to website visits and more. So writing is a really good form of content. It's easily accessible. Everyone can do it with very, very little kit. If you have a computer, you're golden. But not everybody finds it easy. So I have a lot of people that come to me and say, I'm not good at writing. Now, I have to say as well, a lot of the time, people say, I'm not good at writing. And actually, they're perfectly fine at writing. There are things that you can do to help you with your writing. So if you're worried that your grammar's not very good, you can either download something like Grammarly, which helps you, or you can maybe work with a proofreader or a freelance writer or an editor that can just read over what you've said and make sure it makes sense. I think as well, people think, oh God, I've got to write, thousands of words. You haven't. There are guidelines if you're looking to have that content work well for you from an SEO point of view from Google. And I'm pretty sure that my plugin says from 300 words upwards. But again, I've been listening to quite a lot about SEO lately. And they say that longer form can be better, but that's a whole different discussion. 300 words is not an awful lot. So you don't think you've got to write a novel. You haven't. If you're not great at writing and it's something that concerns you, you can always use somebody else to help you, or you can even use voice recognition software that writes for you. So I think Apple do one that just works from the computer, but I'm pretty sure Google do one as well, actually, that allows you to just speak and it types away. And I did also use one called Drag and Dictate a few years ago, which was really good. I mean, I still had to go through and edit it. And please do that, because it reckons you say things that you do not say. And that is important, because I nearly came very unstuck once with that. So you can use voice recognition kind of software. It's probably got a much better term than that, but you know what I mean. Transcription software. Here we go. Transcription software that, if you're not good at writing or you're worried about it, can be really, really useful. And it can also save you time if the transcription software is tuned into your accent, your voice, and the terminology you're using. If it's not, it isn't necessarily the most time-saving thing, because you have to do a lot of editing, but it can be really useful. And of course, when you've written your blog or your whatever, your web page, you can then use that written content to create more stuff. So maybe you extract elements of it and turn them into quotes. Maybe you make a infographic with the information that's in your blog. Maybe you do a list of checklist points that someone who has read your blog can then print off and take away with them and apply. Maybe you slightly tweak it and have it as a guest blog for somebody with obviously fresh content, so you don't have any kind of penalties for duplicate content. But you can do an awful lot with that. You can even break it up. If you have, if you write a blog that is 5 ways to X, you can always pull out each of those individual ways and make those into individual social media posts. So writing content can really help from that point of view. Now, the next thing is speaking. So exactly what we're doing here. Podcasts are really good content. They are distributed in a slightly different way to a written blog. So this podcast goes on iTunes, it goes on to Spotify, it goes on to Podcast Player. I believe it goes on other places, but I am not entirely sure. But it goes into, I use a piece of software called Libsyn that I upload to, and then that distributes it for me. So it's getting to people in a different way. What I also do with the podcast is that if you go to my website, riafreemanpr.co.uk/blog, the podcasts are there in the blog. So I have embedded a little bit of code. I sound like I know what I'm doing. I really don't. It's really easy. And that sticks the podcast, see, I've just shown my lack of knowledge, into the blog, so people can listen directly from my website. So if they don't have iPhone, Android device, anything like that, they're not into podcasts, they can just go to my website, press play, and it can chat away to them. So that can be really good. What I also do, thinking about, we were talking about how you make this piece of content work really hard, is that with the podcast I then put show notes underneath where I try and highlight the key points that I've spoken about. The idea being that if someone's not sure whether they want to commit to listen to for however long, they can quickly skim through and see what they're going to hear, what they might hear if they tune in. I also obviously talk about the key terms I'm talking about. So I like to feel that I'm ticking the writing or blog box a little bit as well. And what I also do then is I try and extract quotes from the podcast, which I can then use on my social media. And then I put the short quote into something like Canva, make it into a graphic, and I can post that in different places. So I'm not just creating the content once, I'm also repurposing it and making it work really, really hard for me. Which I think is something that if you're putting any time into creating any content, you need to make sure it works really hard for you. The next thing I want to talk about is film or video. I love video. I need to get well back onto the YouTube horse again because I feel I've slightly dismounted from that. But video is really good. I do a Facebook Live once a week on my Facebook page, obviously, and I do Instagram stories, which are again video content. I think video is really good because it allows people to get to know you. It allows people to get to know your mannerisms, how you look, what you sound like. It it allows them to share a little bit of your life with you, which sounds a bit deep, but it really does. People can see what you want to show them. But more than that, if you are selling something, whether it's a product or a service, you can use video to really show people what's going on. What is the product? Why is it good? What service do you offer? How can you help people? Now, with my Facebook Lives, obviously I am kind of the product. So I will talk and help answer people's questions to help them further themselves. And obviously the side benefit of that is people can see where my knowledge is and how I could maybe help them with their business. Obviously, I also do a lot of Instagram stories, usually when I'm walking the dog. And I do those because, again, people get to see me, a completely uncut and edited version as well. Because if we meet in real life, I am like I am on Instagram stories. I'm not a polished version of anything. I will usually do or say the wrong thing. And I have got ever so slightly quirky tendencies. So I want people to know that, which I know sounds really brave. I mean, why would you want to share that with anybody? But the thing is, if someone is going to work with you, they're going to see all that anyway. So you might as well let them in on what they're going to expect. Otherwise, it's not going to be a particularly long-term connection, is it? You can only hide crazy for so long. Trust me, I've learned that from experience. So also with the film and the video, you can either extract the audio and create a podcast if you want to. Personally, I'm not sure I would do that because I wouldn't be recording a video the same way I'm recording the podcast. I would be looking to camera. I would be probably keeping it a bit shorter and a bit tighter. And also, I'm not sure it always translates that well. I think some things would translate really well, but some things wouldn't. But maybe that's something for you to explore. I have heard podcasts that people have recorded. I think actually sometimes that's the way it goes. They are doing a podcast and they are recording themselves doing the podcast. So they're focused on the one thing, but they're creating additional content. I don't think it works so well the other way around, but that's just my opinion. Also, from the film point of view, you can create blog content. You can write about what you've been speaking about. You can make little snippets and put those onto your Instagram stories. You can maybe even use the film and put it onto YouTube, upload it natively onto Facebook, and even put it on Instagram stories if you've got the orientation right, because Instagram stories is all about the portrait version rather than the landscape. So again, you can repurpose that. You can even use something like, I think it's called Cut Story, where you take a piece of video content and you chop it into Instagram story sizable pieces. I'm pretty sure that wasn't actually a sentence. But you can also make that content work really hard for you. The next thing is photography. And I know you might be thinking, yeah, but photography is photography. Actually, depending on who you are, that can be your pillar content and you can create everything else around it. So if you're a photographer, obviously it makes sense. But more than that, with your, particularly with Instagram as a social media platform, your photograph or your graphic or whatever, but let's stick with photography at the moment, is what allows you to storytell. So you will see on Instagram a strong image is going to usually get a much, much better result than a weak one, because that on Instagram is what it's all about. It's about the quality of the image. The caption is really important as well, and I think a caption is really, really important. But if you haven't stopped the scrolling by the image, they won't have a chance to read the caption. So consider photography as content creation too. This can be you have a photo shoot. It might be that you take pictures of your own product. It might be that you do flat lays, selfies. The list is endless. I would, from my own personal point of view, I have seen the positive effect that professional images have had on my following, on my engagement, and that is a really big deal for me. But also, I am not going to have a professional photo shoot every time I get an article through that I've written, because that sounds really, really arrogant, but I write for 3 magazines every month. So I'm not going to have 3 professional photo shoots each month. Or if I get, if a client's brought out a new product I want to talk about, I'm not necessarily going to have a professional photo shoot every time that happens, because I'm lucky that my clients are really talented and have beautiful, beautiful products. And when I go to a show or event and I see people, so recently I went to Your Horse Live and I took loads of pictures, and it allows me to storytell about the people in the pictures, the businesses behind the pictures, and everything else as well. So I'd really consider photography, especially with social media being what it is. Although we see Instagram as the most visual platform, on Facebook and Twitter, images work. A good quality image will stop that scrolling and make people sit up and listen. And that is what you want. So take your photography really seriously. As I said, you can then make it work even harder. You can write a blog post about it. You can extract snippets of it. You can put it with quotes and lovely captions, but don't underestimate it. The great thing is as well, if on Instagram, if you've got a Facebook shop, you can have the shoppable links. So not only is your photograph creating content for you, it's also allowing people to buy directly from you if it's photographed well and properly. And the last point I'm going to cover today, obviously there are other ways you can create content, but it's create, which sounds so vague. But what I was really going after was graphics. So these are things like quotes, captions, testimonials, memes. I'm never sure how you say that. Little things like that you can make through some software online. Things like I've mentioned WordSwag in a previous podcast, or Canva, or there's plenty of the graphic design software. There's just the two I use, and you can make graphics using quotes, inspirational quotes from clients, testimonials, loads and loads of different options there. But you can create your own content from nothing really, and that's really exciting as well. You can then use that on your social media platforms, and as we were talking about before, you could use a graphic, a quote, as the thing that allows you to write a blog post, that maybe allows you to talk about something on a podcast, that maybe allows you to talk about something on film. Maybe you saw a quote and it really stuck with you. So it's something that you would perhaps talk about in your Instagram story or an Instagram live or an IGTV, but then on your main post feed, it would be that image that you've created, that graphic you've created. And that can be really good too. So this is just 5 different ideas on content. Obviously, the writing one is the most obvious and the one people think of the most, but there's a load of other stuff out there. These are just 5 points that I've touched on, but I just wanted to talk about it really because we're not all good at everything. So my photography skills are lacking, let's be honest, but I've put time into developing them to a degree, but I also know that I need to invest in professional photo shoots because really my arm's only so long and there's only so many selfies I think anyone's Instagram feed needs. But I also know that I'm quite good at writing. I mean, that's kind of how this all started as a copywriter. Speaking, I'm ballsy enough to do a podcast, so I can use that. Filming, again, I can deal with that. And creating, again, I'm no graphic designer, but I can create what I want. But on the flip side, I'll also work with graphic designers from time to time to create what I want if it's more complex and something that's a bit out of my reach. So you don't have to be good at all the things. And that is really important. But if you're good at one of the things, or more than one of the things, you can be good at all of them to a degree, but enough just to have a go. Because I don't think people judge us as much as we think. If you are worried that on video you'll look crazy, don't be. I would be amazed if you could out crazy me on a video. And to be honest, I get really nice responses from that. I get people who go, oh God, that's so relatable. I had a thing when my children went for their first swimming lesson. Again, this isn't even business related, but I put it on my Instagram stories because my Instagram feed is, obviously I am my brand. And I want to share the things that I share, the wins, I talk about things, but also I want to share the real life stuff behind it. And when you take 2 twin 3-year-olds swimming and they scream the whole time and say they don't like it and they want to get out, and you just think, this has been hell. I don't know what I'm doing. This isn't good. Ugh. actually sharing it with somebody kind of is nice, even if it's just your Instagram stories. But actually, I got some really lovely responses from that, from people going, oh my God, I can completely relate to that. Keep going. Let me know how they go this week. I literally had people reaching out, asking me to keep them informed about the boys, which was so lovely. Because the way we live now, we are able to share not just the shiny, nice things, but the real life stuff. And we can do that in these different ways. And that's really important. People buy from people. And if you're looking to develop a personal brand, or you're a small business or a sole trader, I'd really, really urge you to just embrace it. You won't be perfect first time. You might not be perfect on the 20th time. And God knows this is a perfect example of that, because I faffed so much about whether or not I should start the podcast. I really did. And I was worried that I wasn't going to sound right. I'd say the wrong thing, take too much editing. I'd waffle. Literally, I could have written a book with excuses why not to do it. But you know what? I did it. And you can do anything too. I've written blogs with spelling mistakes. The world doesn't stop turning. You can just fix them. Thank God for online stuff. I have had a coughing fit in this podcast that you won't hear because it'll be edited out. That's the beauty of editing. I can film an Instagram story, and if I don't like it, I just press the cross and it's gone. But please just try. You don't have to be good at everything. Just have a go. Have a go, and you'll be amazed at the results. I promise you that. So I hope that's really helped you think about content a little bit differently. The great thing is with all of these ways is you get to speak to your customer in a completely unedited, unfiltered way. If you want to tell your customer something, if you are creating your own content, it's your call, you do it. And that is the most amazing power that really, if we were talking a few years ago, we wouldn't have had. So let's embrace that. Let's just, let's nail it. It's not as scary as you think. It's all going to be fine. If you need any egging on, I'm always around on, everywhere really, to be honest. But I lurk quite a lot on Instagram, where I'm at Ria Freeman PR, and also Facebook, where I'm also at Ria Freeman PR, and on Twitter, I'm at Ria Freeman. Thanks so much for listening. I hope that's inspired you a little bit. I'd love to hear how you get on, and I will speak to you very, very soon.